So my husband and I are preparing to go to Gulf Wars, the war with no enemies. It is one of the largest SCA, or Society for Creative Anachronism, events in the Southeast. It's the first time that we've ever gone, and it also will be the longest event that we've ever gone to. It's going to be a whole week. We have a fair amount of outfits that we could wear, but we're going to need a few more. I have been told to pack for every kind of weather imaginable because it is March in Mississippi along the Gulf Coast. So I have pulled all linen and wool that I have in my stash to see what I can work with, and also some of these fun trims that are also in my stash that I have gotten, and I want to see what I can make with what I already have and then what I might need to go get. Currently we are 2 weeks out. I feel like I should have started this a little sooner, but here we are. I had other things I was finishing, like my 1940s ball gown. I have no idea if that video has been edited by the time this comes out. So either go look for it or stay tuned. I realized I have a lot of this dark blue linen. This is the same linen that I made my husband's 18th century outfit out of, and I still need to make him a waistcoat or waistcoat out of this. So I need to save like a little bit of fabric for that, but then I think I definitely have enough for a tunic for him, maybe even a tunic for me, and I do love a good dark blue. I have this black linen that I found, which I definitely was going to make a tunic for my husband out of. So I'm excited about that. So I'm going to get him a tunic made out of this. So that's easy. So tunic for me, tunic for him. Great. I'm going to make, I think, some leggings for him out of this. These, I have no idea if there's like enough to actually make anything out of. I have a fair amount of light white linen over here. I could definitely make myself a cap. I've been wanting to make myself a St. Brigida cap for a moment now, so I'm going to try to do that. Otherwise, I might be able to get like a shift or a smock to go under an outfit out of a couple of these. I think I only have one and my husband only has one. I have like an 18th century one that I could like make work, but, well, actually I have two if you count my Tudor one and my medieval one. So yeah, I got a few things to make. I don't know how much of it I'll film. I would like to document most of this, but we'll see. So past Marie had a lot of grand plans and a concept of time management that was truly magical. Alas, I did not get all of those projects done. I had to focus on just a couple because I only had 2 weeks, and it's not like I spent the entire 2 weeks just sewing. I also had, I still have a full-time job that is not just doing YouTube. I was going to say sadly, but I do really like my full-time regular day job. So because of that, I decided to narrow in on 2 tunics, one for me, one for my husband. And I realized after talking to some people that it's kind of customary to wear your kingdom colors when you're marching into the grand procession, the opening ceremonies of Gulf Wars, or any really any large interkingdom event that has an opening ceremony, such as Penzig. Not that I've gone to Penzig, only to Gulf Wars so far. I have plans for Penzig in the future, but we'll talk about that later. Right now we're talking about Gulf Wars and the tunics that I made to wear in the grand procession into opening ceremonies that were white and black. So those are what I'm going to show you how I made in this video. I made a black longer tunic that was probably like mid 1300s in style for myself, and then for my husband I made a slightly earlier one for him that was probably more like 1200s Western Europe. For both of ours would be the culture that it came from. And for his though, I did a really cool applique work on the front. This first time I ever had done something like that had the Meridian populace badge on it. So I'm going to show you how I made my tunic, I will not go into incredible detail on how I made his because it's going to be very similar to mine, but without the front gore and shorter. But then I will show you how I did the applique work.
So since I'm working on a tight deadline for this project, I decided to just use what I had, which was this black fabric that has a nice little thin black stripe in it as well. And I have had this fabric for literally more than a decade, and I just need it gone. I've already made my husband a jacket out of it, and I actually have a video. This was one of like my first videos. I think it was in like the first or second year of YouTube that I showed how I made this. So go watch that. It'll be lots of fun. It is definitely not an accurate period blend. It has to be some type of synthetic something. And I used a tunic that I had already just made kind of to be my pattern. This is from my historically accurate Made Marian outfit that I made last year, but I have not edited that video together yet. I have plans to do that this fall though, so stay tuned for that. Now, this is where I did mess up a little bit. I used the tunic too much as a guide, and I did not allow for a hem, which came back to bite me later, but I'll show you how I fixed that without it being too short or piecing too much. I was actually quite proud of my fix. I also have a couple other videos on my YouTube channel about making medieval tunics. One is about making one without a pattern and just using a t-shirt as a guide. If you're more interested in a little bit more in-depth of how that's going, you can go there. Right here, I am about to cut out the gores. I am making a pattern for the gores just based off of some measurements, which would be the measurement of right above my belly button, because you want to make sure you have seam allowance, and the top of your gore should not be like inserted. You need to leave like a little inch around so it goes in smoothly. Like right above your belly button, for me, since I'm making a long tunic, is going to go to the floor. So that's going to be my measurement, and you always want to cut the gore on the bias. What I like to do is just use whatever width of fabric I have and then divide it up into 3 triangles, because that's going to be your 4 gores. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sew the sleeves. I just did a 10-inch sleeve with a 4-inch gusset, that little thing that goes under the sleeve. I also have a video about inserting that if you would like to partake in that later. And then I just did the measurement from my arm all the way to, really I do like the middle of my hand, because then I have enough room to hem it. Remember, seam allowance. Now here I just cut up my center front and center back. I did it at the same time, so they are going to have the exact same cut. Now I'm inserting my center front and center back gores. For the side, you don't have to cut it, you just don't sew the sides until you put in the gores, and then you just sew the gores into the sides, so that works out pretty easy. I am using my sewing machine for this project. Historically, in Western medieval Europe at this time, you would be hand sewing everything. I do not have time for that, nor am I really trying to make this piece super period. I am trying to make this tunic to represent my fictional kingdom of Merieids. So I'm really putting the A in the SCA, I'm putting the anachronism in there, with still, going with a historically accurate style. So that's what my thought process is. Now that I've set my front and back gores into the tunic, I am now going to set my side gores into the side seams of the tunic and do the exact same thing. I will be setting these with my machine, and when I'm doing this, I'm going to make sure that they are going to the correct height so that they are in line with the front and the back gores. I have a little bit more flexibility in where I place the height of the side gores. Here I am going to go ahead and set my sleeves into my tunic. It is really nice to make medieval tunics on a machine. They go together super fast, and it's just so nice to have a it's a pretty simple project. Like once you've made one, just zip through it. You are good to go. And especially if you're using a sewing machine, it's so nice. And if you're not doing any like other things, it's pretty easy. Now the tunic is basically done, so I'm going to go ahead and try it on.
Alright, so I basically made 2 tunics today. I made this tunic, and then I also made the black tunic for my husband. I have not tried this on. This is the first time, so let's see how this is going to go. Oh, okay. It's a little tight, but we made it. Okay, I was really worried about getting like the center height right, but I feel really good about this. My side gores, they're coming up a little high. And I was like, what? How did that happen? So I think I would like to redo them a little bit. Yeah, they're coming up a little too high. The arms feel fine. I need to, you know, hem this up, and I think I'm going to do some shaping on this. I think it would look really cool. I like this fabric with it. I'm not positive about how, like, honestly, I've had this fabric for so long, and I've made a couple things out of it. One is a awesome Renaissance jacket for my husband, and then I was keeping this fabric to make him pants to go with it, but then, like, we got black pants that were linen that I'm like, that's fine. You don't need these. So this is like the only other black fabric I had in my stash, and I was talking with my friend today about when you go to Gulf Wars, apparently it's a thing for opening ceremonies for everybody to dress up, usually in the colors of their kingdom, to then like march in with their kingdom to process in. I don't have anything black or white. Well, I do have a few white things, but they're undergarments. I was like, I have white linen, but then if I make a white linen like tunic, I don't know, I just feel like it's an undergarment, like it doesn't read super great. And I was like, ooh, this is cool. I was going to make my husband a black one. We like coordinating. I was also thinking about how I'm going to then have like a white veil, and I thought about putting little black stars like on the veil, which also, I don't know if I can document as historically accurate, but I think it would look really cool. And yeah, this fabric is, I think, a little bit more Renaissance-y, but we're making it look a little bit like later medieval. I'm really happy with how this gore went in. Not so much about my side gores. I'm going to go ahead and mark where I think my side gore should go. Yeah. Just gotta move them down a little bit. I'm not going to take out the whole gore. I'm just going to seam rip it to a point and then like just kind of like it down. If that makes sense. I'm not going to actually like redo the entire thing. I'm just going to take it in at the top. But otherwise, I feel very like regal. It's a fancy fabric. I looked up about stripes, and so far I have seen like some stripes in medieval clothing. Usually they're going this way. I did not have enough fabric to do that, so it's like, piecing is period, like there's a possibility that stripes could go this way. I have seen some stripes go this way, but they're like really like big stripes, and these are really thin stripes. So I don't know, that was just my very quick researching earlier this morning to make myself feel like maybe this is historically plausible. But also like, it doesn't have, I'm not like, this doesn't have to be like the most historically accurate. I'm trying to represent my kingdom that is made up and fictional, so I think that's okay.
All right, now that I have basically the tunic constructed, now it's time to do all those finishing touches, such as the hem. So here I am cutting the hem. Now, you always want to do a little bit of a nice rounded hem. You don't want to cut it just straight across, because otherwise it's not going to hang correctly. It's going to be weird. I did it before on accident. Never want to do it again. Now, this is when I realized it's kind of short, and I didn't want to do a double folded hem because then it's going to be really short. And I have to do some type of double folded hem because this fabric was shedding like nobody's business. It needed something. So my uncle had sent me this like kind of twill like tape stuff years ago, and I still have so much of it. I thought, what if I just sew this onto the hem, and then it essentially becomes like another inch. So I'm going to sew that onto right sides together, of the fabric, sew that onto the fabric, and then flip it over so you don't see it. And then I'm going to do a nice little hand stitch because I do still care about my period finishes and things not looking super machine sewn, even if every other seam in this dang tunic is sewn on a machine. You don't see them. So all the ones that you see though are hand sewn. So I did a nice little hem stitch on the hem because it is so aptly named, as that is what, you're supposed to do on the hem, is a hem stitch. And then I went ahead and I cut a neckline. I just did a semi-circle neckline. It becomes a giant circle on the front and back. I used my other tunic for a guide. I've also used a t-shirt neckline for a guide. And then I did a hem stitch on the neckline and also on the sleeves. And here it is. So for the grand opening ceremonies of Gulf Wars, I wore this black tunic, and then I had a white veil, so I had my black and white. Then I also wore my pearls to add a little bit more white. I also had not truly realized it when I had been given my circlet when I became a lady of the court, but my circlet is also white and black. So of course I wore that to opening ceremonies as well. All right, now I'm going to show you how I made my husband's tunic for opening ceremonies. I made his in a just generic T pattern as well, but he does not have the center gore, which is more of a traditional T tunic pattern. But just the gores on the side, and then of course the sleeves, the gussets, the main body block. I go into more detail about this in other videos. I sewed all of that by machine. I am loving my new to me Janome machine. I can't believe it took me so long with my brother. Like, I loved my brother, but oh my gosh, it had given out and I had not realized it. Lucky absolutely loved that I was making these tunics that were the same color as her. She was like, yes, we are all the same now. She loves blending in. She's like, yes, all of the fabric camouflage. It was so cute. So she was very involved in the making of these tunics and was very excited that we were making them in her colors. I think she was probably thinking we were making these in honor of her, and that's all right. Now I did something new with this tunic, and that was I did a keyhole neckline, which means that it is a curved neckline, but then it comes down a little bit like a keyhole where there's a little slit only in the front. So I decided to do that for this tunic. My husband was interested in having something a little different, so I made it with a keyhole neckline, and then I did a binding for the neckline, and I used again that kind of white twill tape-y stuff, but this time I folded it like a taco over the raw edges of the fabric of the neckline and then pinned that down. And again, because it's a visible seam, I hand sewed all of that. And also it was going to just be weird to sew it with a machine. I was not going to be able to get all of the little minutia of the curve of the bottom of that neckline, of the bottom of that keyhole to lay nicely if I was just going to plow over it with a machine. No, it was not going to end well for me. So hand sewing is where it's at for that. I was very happy with how the keyhole neckline turned out. My husband was as well. And I think I will do more keyhole necklines in the future. It is one of the variations of necklines of medieval tunics. And it's fun to have some variation. And, you don't want to be bored doing the same thing over and over again. So, gotta have a little variety. Variety is the spice of life, right? And then, of course, there is going to have to be a section where the binding meets, and I did that in the center back to hide it as best I can. You don't want it to be center front. People are going to see that way more than center back. To hold all of this together, I did a back stitch, and I made it to where the line of thread was going to be shown on the outside, and then the rest was going to be on the inside. The time has come now to show you how I made the applique of the Meridian Populace badge on the front of my husband's tunic. Now, he is the Kingdom Bard of Meridies for this Gulf Wars, and as such, he will be competing for a war point and kind of spearheading that. So I wanted it to be very obvious, like, this is the Meridian Bard, and he was so happy about it. He felt like a little Meridian superhero, and I absolutely adore that for him. The populace badge is a circle of white, a strip of black in the center, and then 3 stars white on the center black strip and then black on the 2 white sides. I used an embroidery hoop and kind of traced around that to cut a circle. It wasn't a perfect circle, so then I folded it like you saw and kind of trimmed the edges, and that helped to make it more of a perfect circle. I then just used a strip of black. I measured the diameter of the circle, divided that by 3, and that was then going to be the width of my center black strip. And then to make the stars, I had this little star cookie cutter that I then traced out onto the fabric, and that was my pattern for the star. I then just layered all of this fabric on top of each other. It's all linen. The fabric is linen. Linen is a little fiddly and flaky, so it's not the best for appliques, but it's what I had. For the stars, I did not turn under any of the edges because that was not going to work with how small the stars were. So I just did a back stitch closest to the edge of the fabric as I could. Lucky, I need the fabric. I need it. No, that I'm not needing to settle down more. I need the fabric. Oh my gosh, why? She scratched me. I just needed the fabric. You can sit on this side. And then on the circle and the strip of black linen, I did fold under the raw edges and then stitched around it. And again, I'm just doing a back stitch because it's a nice continual stitch that just finishes everything off. I am using a black thread because most of the images that I found had a little black border around the Meridian populace badge, so that was kind of my take on that. But here he is competing as Kingdom Bard. Doesn't he look like a Meridian superhero? He's also wearing the bard cape that I made him, and it's just, I think it's like, he accomplished a life goal there, and I was so happy to cheer him on and to, help make the accessories for him to feel his best on that day. And here we are wearing our outfits, marching into opening ceremonies of Gulf Wars with our Kingdom of Meridies. We had the absolute best time, and I cannot wait to tell you all about it in my next vlog, which will be all about Gulf Wars. So please be sure to ring that bell, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.